Qué bien, qué pasa, saludos a todos mis grandiosos del mundo. Es tu hombre, King Nabi the Great. Hoy tenemos una reseña de la película. La película es título Macario. We have a movie review for the classic Mexican film Macario. It was released in 1960, directed by Roberto Galvadon, starring Ignacio, López Tarso as Macario, and his wife is played by the great actress que en paz descanse. She passed away way too young, Pina, Pellicer. Now, to give you a quick summary, the film Macario takes place during Dia de los Muertos. It is about a family who is very poor. They live by very little. However, the man of the house, the husband, Macario, is a good man who will, starve himself just to make sure that his children eat. His one dream in life is to have a whole turkey, el guajolote para mí solamente. He wants a whole turkey to himself just to eat and enjoy and savor. Now, there's a few themes that are very prevalent throughout the film Macario. We have the theme of the bond of family. We have the socio-economical situation at the time. And then we also have the theme of the spirituality and life and death, which is kind of the overall theme that carries the movie. First, we'll start with family. Macario is so endeared to his family, so loyal to his family. He's a wood chopper. He goes, into the town every day selling wood to make money to be able to bring back food to his family. As I said, he's such a good man and he's so loyal to his children that he's willing to starve himself so that they can eat, He loves his wife so much that it just pleasures him just to bring her any kind of joy and happiness that he can. And in turn, she loves him so much that she's willing, that once she finds out that his dream is to get this guajolote, this turkey, and eat it himself, she goes to the utmost of means to get it. I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen the movie. However, she does an extreme thing in order to get this turkey for him to cook it so that he can live out his dream. It's just so beautiful, and it shows the beauty of the Mexican culture and family. It reminds me of the culture of my native family. My parents are from Ghana. It's very similar with the cultures because family is extremely important. The camaraderie. When I went to Ghana to visit years ago, we eat off the same plate. If someone is eating and a person if I'm eating and you walk into the room, it's just instinctive for me to share the food, for me to say, hey, come on, join me. Eat right off of my plate. Eat this food with me. There's so much. It's such a beautiful thing that here in the United States, we don't really experience or value as much as other cultures, such as the Mexican culture values. So you see that loyalty between the husband and wife, which is beautiful. The next subject that I wanted to touch on was the socio-economical situation. The difference between the poor and the rich. We see this in the film, and it really strikes home hard in one point when the children are talking about Dia de los Muertos, and the children had a conversation about it, and people and the wife is talking about it, and it's interesting because they're making their sacrifices, or their offerings, I should say, to their loved ones, right? And then we go to the rich. Now, remember that Macario's dream is just have a turkey to eat for himself. He's eating beans. He just wants a turkey to eat for himself. The rich are offering whole turkeys, multiple turkeys, to their loved ones, their ancestors who have passed on. So you see the difference between poor and rich here, that while the poor can barely even, in this physical human state, could barely even get some meat to eat, the rich have so much that they're sending meat off as offerings. Not even just alone what they have to eat for themselves here in the physical world, but they're sending off offerings of turkey to the spiritual world. And Macario realizes this, and that's kind of what drives his hunger too. Like, look at all these turkeys that are just going off as offerings, and I just want one, just to eat one day. You also see the difference in how people deal with each other. How the lady that Macario's wife works for, how she deals with Macario's wife. She looks at her kind of as less of a person. Even when she makes like one simple mistake, she kind of talks down to her. The people the bakery that Macario delivers to, they kind of talk down to him, and when he leaves without a tip, they're laughing at him like, haha, the man, he didn't even take his tip and things of that nature. So you see just the difference, and you see that once Macario gains his power, how now he's treated differently, because now he has some kind of value to those rich aristocrats and things of that nature. And that's something that kind of carries on today and throughout the world, is this difference between the rich and the poor and how they view each other, and that's shown within the film. Now to the most, I'd say, important and prevalent theme within the movie, and that's the life and death and the symbolism, the spirituality, the mysticism of things, of the film. Of course, it takes place on Dia de los Muertos. Macario has a conversation with the man who's talking to him, about life and death, and the man is telling him that, that the one thing that we all are promised on this earth is that we'll die. Whether it hits you in your liver, your stomach, or whether a tree falls down on you when you're old, you're gonna die sometime. And Macario has a fear, has an insecurity and a fear of this death. It kind of is bothering him the whole time. And that brings us to, once he gets the turkey from his wife and he's so overjoyed, she sees the joy in his face and she just loves it, he runs off to eat the turkey. A side note, when he's running through the woods to eat the turkey, okay, he meets up with the devil god, and then the Grim Reaper of Death, right? So as he's doing this, first he meets the devil tries to trick him and offer him material things. Macario is a great man, so he declines that. And then he runs off again and, meets God, and runs off again and meets death. And the whole time I'm thinking, just stay there and eat the turkey. Because I'm scared that, I hadn't seen the movie before. So I'm scared that something's going to happen and he's going to lose the turkey. So I'm like, eat the turkey. Come, olote, come. That's what I'm saying the whole time. But that was just a thing. So finally, when he meets death, he does eat the turkey, and he gains a power to where now he can tell if people will live or die. And he's given the serum some water that acts as a medicine, that if a person is going to live, he has them drink it and it'll bring them back to good health. Throughout this story, he becomes famous for this, to where he's hired by everybody, and he kind of puts the doctors out of business. So they tell some of the Spanish conquistadors or what have you, that their military, that this guy's doing some things that are against God. He's either a witch doctor or he's a charlatan. So they arrest Macario, and then he has to, in order to be freed, he has to now save the child of one of the high members of society. After that, he kind of learns the meaning of life, but he still is kind of scared of death. He doesn't want to die, and he runs off. So at this point, we realize that this was in fact a test, that the entire time Macario had actually passed, at the point when he met death. death tested him to kind of judge him and see his humanity, and to show him what life is like. He indeed sort of passed that test because he showed throughout that he was a good person. And, it wasn't until the end to where he didn't want to, carry out his last task because he didn't want his children, he didn't want to be burned and his family to see him, tortured in public and things of that nature. And he couldn't really accept the fact that he was gone. That's when he kind of had that conflict, but it wasn't really an issue. He showed that he was, that he was a good person. And it was a beautiful moment, such a beautiful moment in film at the end when they go to search for him and you see him and his wife and she's like, oh, he didn't even finish eating the turkey because it was left, the half that he left to death or whatever, to the Grim Reaper. It was such a beautiful moment that showed once again just how great of a family he had and how great of a wife she was, that she was like, we'll honor you, we'll see you again in the afterlife, and I'm just happy that my last memory, that I was able to bring you the happiness, before you passed away, that you were just so happy, when you died. It's so great that was able to happen, even though we'll definitely miss you. It kind of brought to light something that I've thought about before, but that really death is a beautiful thing. We go off into, as the Grim Reaper, as Death was saying, death isn't the end of your life, it's just the start of a new chapter. You go on to something else, onto the spirit world, to where you can have a new beginning and you can start over and have something that's even more grand than you could even have ever imagined having in the physical. A lot of us, because of the mysteries of death and because of traditions that we've grown up with, we're scared to die. We get really sad when our loved ones die. However, as Macario was saying, what about my children? What about my wife and stuff like that if I die? That's really where that fear and that sadness comes from, is because we're going to miss those people who die. Or we feel like if we die, those people are going to miss us, which is really where it's rooted. However, death is not really a bad thing in life. It's a beautiful thing. And as long as we here on earth remember those who have passed on, that exchange, will remain grand, and it'll be an okay situation. It'll be a beautiful situation. It's something that should be celebrated, because as many people say, many people don't call funerals, they call them homecomings, because you're going back home to the essence. You're going back home from which you came. And that theme is shown a lot through Macario. And it reminded me a lot of, the culture, the African culture that I was raised with, and things of that nature. It's a beautiful thing. And Macario in itself, a great movie. It reminds me once again, watching movies that were, from this time period, that storytelling at the end of the day is what really makes a great movie. You don't need all the super special effects. You don't need all the grand, explosions and visuals. Those are entertaining, don't get me wrong. However, at the root of a good film is just a great story. And Macario is a great story, a great film. Please, en los comentarios, dígame, trata Macario. If you've seen it, tell me about Macario, how it may have affected you, when you saw it, what you think of the movie. If you have not seen the movie, please go see it. If you're a film buff, a cinephile, if you love classic films, you will love this film. I definitely recommend that you go see it. It's classic. Please like this video if you like it. Please share this. Please subscribe. If you enjoy movies, music, and entertainment as much as I do, es tu hombre, King Nabby the Great. Be great in life, and life will be great to you. Sé grandioso en la vida, y la vida será grandioso para ti. Creatividad, abundancia, y prosperidad para todos. And I'm out.
Mafioso, mafioso, mafioso.